Well, the video got interrupted by a phone call. And I had to, the last one, which my phone does the great automatic thing of just stopping your recording when you get a call. I'm sure nobody who's ever received a call, films, I mean, come on. Don't like that. That is a design flaw. Yeah. Anyway, these are classics. They were in the literature section, but I thought, those are like, it's no shame to have literary works considered to have literary value in your genre sections. There's so much overlap. Honestly, the genre terms it's a weird subject to meditate on. What does it mean? That there's this like separate genres that don't get the consideration of being high art. Every genre, even so-called literary, has a ton of filler. Not everything's the greatest thing ever written. But also every work, I feel like there's a way into every work. Most things that someone took the time to create have something to recommend for them, I think. Chess, I've been part of a chess playing family for a long time. People like that. It's the only game I think we kept from a big game closet because it was barely ever used, most of the stuff in there. Once in a while. That's why I got this new deck. Because I'm not anti-fun, despite what all the high schoolers say. Just kidding. All right, let's look at some more. This one on the top should be in the paperbacks. This is in the bookcase in the room at one point. I love Interstellar. I think it's such a good movie. And I hear this adds something to it. This is from a free pile, but I still was like, I would actually read that, Used to be against having anything like this in a collection, like it was subliterary. But it's like we live in a really blurry realm where movies and books cross over. And it's maybe one of the big literary innovations of our time that it like goes beyond the written word a lot. Like if you think about it, people read all day on their phones, but it's interspersed with video and sound. That's just an excellent movie. Even with his eyes closed, the dust got in. Even with the mask on, some of it got to his lungs. It was easy to get lost in one of these storms, even when you knew you were just a few feet away from safety, or at least protection from the wind that made projectiles out of everything, not nailed down. Shielding Murph with his body, pushed toward the house. He came up against the porch, put wood under his feet, and followed Donald and Tom to the front door. It wasn't, after all, his first storm. The official movie novelization. Apparently the one unscientific thing in the movie's makers have said, is that ice planet where there's upside down land masses. Nolan was just really into that effect. You can kind of, any imaginable landscape, I feel like could theoretically exist with the right conditions. This is such a cool part of the story when they go to this planet where time moves differently, and every hour there is years and years elsewhere. It's a bit like Gulliver's Travels a little bit, but with higher stakes. Of course, it's like 2001. I already looked at this one. 3 complete novels in this book. It seems like a very Octavia Butler thing, collections of book-length works. This book really got into who I am. It's appropriate that I'm reflecting on it right now. Some sci-fi readers and writers dismissively call books like this big dumb object books because it's about this gigantic cylinder floating into our solar system, and humans explore it. It's in the future. That's a more advanced humanity that explores it, and they just discover this fascinating thing that this culture sent out, this alien culture. They can get an idea of what these beings were like, because there's one of the most interesting parts is they cut through the holes of the ship, and the ship itself is really interesting and just like an interesting like physics description. What would a ring-shaped ocean inside a giant hollow tube be like? It's pretty wild. But one of the neat parts I loved in this, I read this not too long ago, like in the last year. Saw this copy at Don's and I just had to buy it. Too cool. And this is won a lot of things. It's very influential. There's directors that have wanted to make it forever. Like, I think David Fincher, I want to say, has wanted to make it forever. But the object is named Rama, and it's just basically an eventless story of people exploring. It's not eventless because the whole thing is an event, but it's people exploring this thing and trying to wonder at it. And it's really incredible. They cut a hole in the hull and they find this like storage unit for like a universal maker, basically, and it just contains all these shapes for different objects that the ship can just produce out of whatever. And there are these like living robotic creatures. They're like biological robots that are just like whip-like tentacles and three-dimensional shapes. And these clusters of shapes and tentacles just go all over the ship, making repairs and fixing things and so on. They're not really alive, but they use live elements. That's what the conclusion is. And you don't really get any big answers in this book. It's a big, beautiful, interesting mystery, and you just like get to hang out and take in a sense of wonder. But I've had multiple Rama dreams since reading this. And, oh wow. Once I was like kind of sick. It was like a weird fever dream. And it was so believable and interesting. I mean, honestly, it's a big reason to read sci-fi. You want your dreams to get more interesting? You know? Big reason to read everything. Beautiful Philip Jose Farmer book. Keep getting books from him and not the one I want, which is a Barnstormer in Oz. Oh, what? A major work of science fiction in which a man is marooned on an alien world, his only companion a bizarre, intelligent plant which offers more than just companionship. Strange relations. Oh, this is part of a cool series. Strange Relations is #1 in the SF Rediscovery series, dedicated to making important and influential works of science fiction available once more, and on a continuing basis to discerning readers. Discerning? Maybe. He was a space-age castaway and explorer stranded on an unknown planet. He encountered a giant plant, highly evolved, seemingly with intelligence of its own. It fed him and cared for him. Gradually, he began to realize the strange sensual overtones as the relationship grew. What? This is only one of the fascinating encounters between man and alien so vividly presented by Hugo Award-winning author Philip Jose Farmer in Strange Relations. When this book first appeared, critics and SF enthusiasts alike applauded its innovative spark and its masterful writing. That must have been a moment in culture when people were using SF instead of sci-fi. 1960. I heard someone in a bookstore in the year 2000 say sci-fi, and I was like, let's shut that down right now. Well, this book contains 6 stories. They first appeared in these magazines. Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. Satellite. Thrilling Wonder Stories. So this is what they call a fix-it novel. But maybe they were all written to be of a piece. There's a little rip there that makes me sad. Well, what a wild book this sounds like. Here's a Philip K. Dick novel I haven't read. Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said, or did I a long time ago? Grapples with identity, altered reality, drug use, and dystopia in a rollicking chase story. Won all the awards. World-famous talk show host wakes up one day to find out that no one knows who he is, not even the vast databases of the totalitarian government. What? He has no choice but to go on the run with a host of shady characters, including crooked cops and dealers of experimental drugs. Do they know more than they are letting on? And just how can a person's identity be erased overnight? Okay, Dick. He is unique. I bet he's Liminal Space's favorite. That channel Chris is over there. I bought this recently new at Barnes & Noble, even though I knew the end. Title drew me in, I guess. Oh, a barista at the Barnes & Noble coffee shop was like, this book is so amazing. It's probably tasked with upselling. No, I believed her, and there were a few different books being sold there. I thought, all right, $15. It's good to buy new books, you know. I'm going to be writing a new book. I want people to buy it. Ursula K. Le Guin said this was her favorite book. This is the Arthurian legend. That's what the Sword in the Stone is taken from. It's like the first part. I tried reading it. It seems all right, but also like very familiar. I It didn't sweep me away. But I bet it is great. And I bet if you read the whole thing, it's an experience. I mean, that's a pretty ancient legend now. And it's got a lot of really cool elements. This is another book I have because of For a Breath I Tarry is in it. But this is also a great anthology, and I've read it. And I met the editor once. She has a story in it, too. She's in a partnership with George R.R. Martin. Maybe they're married. I met her at a protest, a screenwriters protest, back in like the late aughts. Back then, she said she and her husband could be contacted through the Santa Fe phone book. She was like, "We've always been listed." I bet that is not true now. That would be insane to have that be true now. But yeah, this is all. It's not just me saying. There's a lot of sci-fi connected to New Mexico. Here's an anthology. Here's all the awards given to New Mexico authors. 9 Hugos, 6 Nebulas. Bunch of other ones. For With a Terry by Zelazny. Some special commentary on it. My living in Santa Fe, New Mexico is a result of a search I began in the early 70s for a congenial place to live and work. I was living in Baltimore at the time. Here's that hilarious Jack Williamson story I mentioned where it's like robots are enforcing Boy Scouts, making everyone be Boy Scouts. Fred Saberhagen, he's another New Mexican smasher. Oh, look, here he quotes Bill Cosby. This is going to age really well, Fred Saberhagen. Susie McKee Charnas. I've read this, so I have read a little of her. Terry Boren. Visited Anaconda, New Mexico. Near Grant. I thought this George R.R. Martin story was really good. This might be the only George R.R. Martin I've read. It was very lyrical, beautifully written fantasy. Stephen R. Donaldson, that's one of those names you see. The truth is that living in New Mexico is largely irrelevant to my writing. That's really funny. Victor Milan, Feast of John the Baptist. Somebody else? Union Press is a good college press. They got to be one of the best. Take issue with their binding on Wisconsin Death Trip, but that's my big criticism. I wish they'd bring stuff back in print that's like a pretty important part of their catalog, like Albuquerque and Narrative History. But that's a cool anthology. Kazuo Ishiguro. He wrote Remains of the Day, which is one of my favorite books, so I just pick up his other stuff. I didn't love Never Let Me Go. Felt like he kind of fumbled some of the genre elements, but I really genuinely like a lot of genre stuff, and I like to see it like done right. I feel like sometimes when literary people do genre stuff, they don't realize how much time some of these realities would take, and they like don't give us big enough time frames to make them believable. Or I don't know. I mean, I found like the central premise of Never Let Me Go that everyone would just be okay with this for the most part, mining clones for their organs. I found it to be not convincingly rendered. I thought there would be way more protests. There would be major social division over that. Maybe I'm wrong and it's just a more cynical portrait and I just have to accept that. But I loved Remains of the Day, no caveats attached, and got this because I read a good review of it. It's a pretty cool looking book. Like the pages are dyed black, illustrated. Action shot. I went to an amazing wild horse race in Crown Point, New Mexico, earlier last summer. It was incredible. They just let these giant near wild horses out onto this dirt arena. You're just right there on the other side of a small fence and a small bleacher. I don't know where this came from. I suspect my oldest daughter. And these horses come out and they're just dragging cowboys holding on to the ropes. It was interesting. In Crown Point, all the cowboys are Native American. I'm like, whoa. It's not cowboys and Indians anymore, to use that old colloquial phrase. It's, it's cowboys slash, and the terminology is different now. Crazy the words we get stuck with just because Columbus was unwilling to accept that North America wasn't India, or that chili pepper wasn't pepper. Love David Lynch. Should have gotten this out when I did that video. But this is by Mark Frost. And Lynch himself didn't wholeheartedly endorse or consider canon these books. Fortunately, this is the second Twin Peaks book. 3 if you count Laura Palmer's diary. Maybe there's more. But I am a big enough fan that I might read this and get enjoyment out of it. I think Twin Peaks, the old show, Twin Peaks, the movie, and Twin Peaks, the new series, combine into one of the most incredible trilogies of modern visual art. I mean, what an experience. An exploration of dream. I've sometimes said my two favorite TV mythologies are Adventure Time and Twin Peaks. Different ones, but pretty great. And I've got the 5 Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books in a collection. And this is the sequel written by his estate after his death. What a strange saga these books are. They began as a radio show, scripts for a radio show, and the scripts for the first season of the radio show were shaped into the first book. Then the books got ahead of the radio show scripts. What a strange thing. And now even this one has been adapted into the BBC radio as well. And I hear that the BBC radio version cleans it up and makes it better, makes it fit these other ones better. And some people consider it the superior version. Of course, some fans don't accept this at all. I mean, that didn't really need another one. They all die at the end of the 5th one. Spoiler alert, it's kind of a famous part of the series. A nice comment said something about how my videos are good because they don't have spoilers, but I'm like, that's probably just a coincidence if there's never any spoilers. I mean, I guess I am careful if it's something that I know, like plot awareness is something really key to a single enjoyment of something. But really, the good analysis happens when you've read something a bunch and you're not hung up on things like plot. You can do the deep dives into themes and so on. Ian Colfer was a weird choice, I think, for this, but his only famous stuff before that had been like the Artemis Fowl books that were like for young readers. And I think they were published by a Disney imprint. And did they put a mark on there? Bookstores? Or that's a bug. Something squished by this. Wonderful. One time I opened up like a 140-year-old dictionary and there was a giant dead bug from 140 years before. And it was like, someone should study this stuff in a library. Some grad student, could do species comparisons from the oldest books the insects captured in a library. I bet you could find 20 samples or something like that, 100 samples if you looked at every book in Zimmerman Library at UNM. Every E. Olden book, These really are very funny and pretty profound in their way. The bonus story was nothing, I think. I didn't like it. Or it was just like whatever, like nothing, pointless. But like Mostly Harmless has things I quote all the time. There's a couple of scenes that have really stayed with me, and that's the 5th one. And I don't know which one it is where Arthur Dent wakes up on like a Stone Age planet and he's been stuck there for a really long time. But I was once staying over at somebody's house and that was like the only book they had sitting around. And I hadn't read the first one for a really long time. And that was the only one I had read. And I remember reading that and being like, this is hilarious. Not enough good funny books. That's why I hold on to stuff like this. It's become so iconic. I have a sibling and a child that has Don't Panic tattooed on them. And I know other people from this. Tried to read this, and I didn't have the commitment needed to read through the whole thing. I thought, it's fine, but it wasn't making me laugh, and it felt less than inspired. Don't consider this a final verdict on that. I hang on to it because I plan to read it next time I read all of these. And that is funny to call it part 6 of 3. That's the rest of the large sci-fi. Now I get home. Next time we'll look at a few books about sci-fi. And maybe I'll do a few individual videos on sci-fi authors that I just have a lot of them individually. Like Zelazny and Bradbury. Maybe Wells. Clark. Asimov. In the 1930s, the CCC would allow you to join if you had 3 good teeth. It's a fact my friend Stephen Usherman found when he researched them. So maybe I'll let the authors join if they have 3 titles, sci-fi collection, and not just paperbacks. 4 or 5 is a better number. Maybe I'm reluctant to leave the sci-fi section. Am I stuck in adolescence? Is this why I'm at my old high school? Literally working the front desk at my old high school. What does it all mean? Symbolism! But why is sci-fi necessarily adolescent? I don't know, it's just an association that happens sometimes with it. Adolescents read it sometimes. Overlap with comic books and pulp magazines. I once wrote that all the bad things and all the good things anyone's ever heard about Boston are true. And maybe it's the same with sci-fi. Maybe it is a nerdy genre where people who can't hack it in this reality crawl for comfort. But then, counterpoint, yeah, so? Leave me alone. Like you never seek escape from reality. Beer was literally figured out before bread. First things kids want to do is spin around until they're dizzy and fall over. They seek a state that's more interesting than the one they're in. So on those notes, I would say that sci-fi answers an ancient human impulse to wonder and to dream beyond our present reality. And it ain't all bad. It's cool. It connects us to larger timelines. That's why it's good to read history too. You're in balance, that's the thing with reading. Here's the kind of nerdy kid I was. I was reading so many comic books when I was in 5th grade. I remember being like, I'm ruining my ability to read. I shouldn't read so many comic books. I really gotta stop. I gotta think about this. So I know for a fact that that's the kind of stuff 5th graders worry about. Oh, nerdy little freak 5th graders anyway. So yeah, I mean, I guess, it is good to read widely. Not just, if you're a writer, I feel like you should want to know all the gears. That said, you can't read everything. And there's definitely things that I just don't have in my collection, or that are real anomalies. I could see building the sci-fi collection back up. But again, you can only read so many books, I do love paperbacks. I should get one of those paperback cases like I have in the room for sci-fi paperbacks, and maybe a bigger one for the nonfiction. This collection is ever evolving. Anyway, this channel is closing in on 300 subscribers. That's so wild. Thanks for watching, y'all. Sorry this channel has 0 production value, but you know what? But just one more note on this. I think it's actually Denis Villeneuve who's going to adapt this. And I think he would do a really good job of it. He's done a good job with the Dune movies, I think. Made them their own thing. They work. But I could see him doing a really good job with this. I mean, it will need some human story, probably. But I don't know. A really faithful adaptation would be kind of uncinematic in its way. It would just be a different kind of cinema. Characters as observers on the edge of something unfathomable. Yeah, there was even some talk of him directing it before Dune Part 3, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen now. So who knows, this could be another one of those twisting in the wind development stories that happens in books and movies. All right, well, I'm off to write an article for a local subscription-based newsletter that will be all about Nob Hill, a district of Albuquerque, and the surrounding area. So I'll have to write those articles. What I want to do is lie down and sleep, but sometimes you gotta do the writing that pays the bills. And I always end up excited about whatever I'm writing anyway and getting into it. Hey Squirrel, I haven't seen much of you in this video. How's it going? Psst. Hi. It's from 1973. And it has sequels. Alright, take care everybody. To work on my book more too. Gotta finish that oral history chapter. Killing me. I will. This is the year. Just have 7 interviews left. I need to like launch volleys of interview requests. All 7 people need to be asked. Easier said than done sometimes. All right. Well, take care, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks for watching these videos. Appreciate y'all. See ya.